Hi, welcome to Truth and Reality. I'm Ashley. I'm so glad that you're here. This podcast is dedicated to just that, talking about the realities of life, the ups, the downs, the in-betweens, and how truth, how our faith, and how God fits into all those spaces. So welcome today. And hey, Melissa, how are you today?
Hey Ash, good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So glad that you're with us. Today we are talking about forgiveness. Forgiveness is, it's a tough topic. It
It is
is
not.
gets a, yeah, it gets a little dicey when issues go from schoolyard issues and playground issues to adult issues. And so we're talking about forgiveness. We're going to talk about unforgiveness. And we're just going to kind of maybe start by just talking about the misconceptions on forgiveness. So we're glad that you're here. Grab your coffee, your tea, or whatever you're drinking and
Yeah,
join
what's
us
your
for it.
choice today, Ash? What you got?
Do you know do you know what? I have water again, but this morning I had a latte. That is my drink of choice when I go out. How about you?
You know what? It's Gatorade, and I think you know this. Some of the viewers don't. I am training for a half marathon in just a couple of weeks, so I did a long run yesterday, and I'm still hydrating. So yes, it's Gatorade in the middle of the day. Not my typical norm, but cheers to that.
I love that. And yay for your half marathon. That's a lot of work. So you go, girl.
I
That's
hope I
awesome.
hope you get the finish line with a big Starbucks and say woohoo.
Oh, I was going a sign, but I can bring coffee too. That's awesome. Yes. So we're just going to get started and talking about some of the misconceptions that we've held about unforgiveness. And I don't know about you, Melissa, but some of the things that I thought about forgiveness and unforgiveness is I really thought that forgiveness was saying that whatever happened is okay. Like
Yep.
I grew up just being a kid learning like you say they say sorry and you say, "Oh, it's okay."
Yep.
I'm teaching my kids differently to say, I forgive you, or and not saying it's okay because what happens when it's not okay? So
Right.
I had a lot of resistance to forgiveness after walking through trials in my marriage. And I understood fully that I needed to be forgiven by God
Yep.
and that, I make mistakes all the time. But when something so deeply wounds you, it's almost like I wanted to hold on to the wounding because if I let go of it, I thought it wasn't going to matter. I thought it was
Yep.
saying it's okay. And I thought it was saying that, oh, you're free to rewound me. Like, I had
Yeah.
so many misconceptions about forgiveness. How about you? Did you walk through any of that, or what do you think about?
It's interesting. I think childhood, I don't remember and a lot of saying sorry. I don't know if that was something that wasn't taught, or maybe I just don't remember it, don't recall it. I think my sisters and I would fight and we'd say sorry, or maybe I did something wrong with my parents and said I was sorry. I didn't hear I forgive you back. I think I learned that terminology having children, even being
Mhm.
married. I think you learn to say sorry a lot, right? You're wrong a lot and you've done things that you shouldn't, or you mess up. And so I think sorry becomes part of your vocabulary being married, and realizing, like you said, you make a lot of mistakes. I think one of the things that I really hold hard and true is sorry is just kind of empty for me unless there's change that goes with it. And so that's really
Yeah.
what I my kids and even instill in them is like sorry means change, whoever that is,
Mhm.
a friendship. I probably hold a higher bar to my kids, but it's like I want to see the action differently with what you're saying sorry for. Sorry sometimes just can kind of feel empty. Even with friends, I feel like, oh, I'm sorry, I won't ever do that again. I'm like, so, and
Mhm.
I'm guilty of saying sometimes I've held unforgiveness longer than I should have, whether that's a spouse, my kids, or a situation. And so I think it's constantly something I'm working on and achieving of getting better at. Because really, and I think you and I will dive into this later, unforgiveness only holds us back. Right. And I
Yeah.
realize it only makes me bitter and angry and not the other person, whoever that is. So,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and they say that unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die from the poison,
right.
to put it, it's kind of harsh, but that's what unforgiveness is. And I really lived through that where I think I said like, okay, I'm willing to forgive them, but when they weren't remorseful, right?
Yeah.
And you didn't see remorse. It's
Yep.
like remorse and forgiveness are separate things.
Yep.
When you have reconciliation, right? They need to go
Yep.
together. but in the
Yep.
situation I was at, I was really unwilling to let go of. I wanted to keep holding the hurtful things because I felt like if I let go of them, that I wouldn't matter, that what
Yep.
happened to me didn't matter or it wasn't costly or didn't mean
Yep.
anything. And it was so interesting. I wrote about it in my book that there are a few things like what forgiveness is and what
Yeah.
forgiveness isn't.
Yeah.
And just my journey of going to therapy and, praying through this and having mentors speak to me over forgiveness and just talking about what it is and what it isn't. And when I realized what it wasn't, I was
Hmm.
more willing to look at what it was.
Right.
I too held unforgiveness for way too long until I saw the bitterness of my own soul coming out sideways at my kids, at my sister, at friends, and I was like, "Oh boy, I need to change." And it was so interesting because I was in a position for a long time where I was like, "They need to change, they need to
Yep.
change," and I was actually being judged. I was
Yeah.
being judged over the situation and over the people involved, and I was holding on to anger. Like you said, you hold on to it too long,
Oh,
and I was
100.
holding on to it. Yeah?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Completely.
And that anger, I think, gives us power, but it's not the kind of power you want, and it's false
Right.
power, right? It's just
Right.
creating more issues. It was so interesting. I wanted to read this one part. I said, I wanted to be free and I wanted to heal. I got to a space where I wanted to be free and I wanted to heal more than I wanted to be paid back, which is
Yeah.
impossible,
Yep.
right? Or even get even, which only puts more pain in a situation. My counselor at the time had talked with me through unforgiveness and how unforgiveness is like a rusty old metal chain that's attached to us. And
Mm.
for me, I'm so visual that it's like it was attached to my chest. And
Yeah.
every time I tried to move forward, I walk forward or do something new in life and keep going, every time there'd be a trigger, there'd be something that happens, and that rusty chain would pull me flat on my face. And it would be like I was completely taken out all over again.
Hmm.
And I remember one day she was like, "Well, you can unhook the chain. You understand? Like
Hmm.
like you can
Right.
do that. You can
Yeah.
unhook it and drop it and say, God, I give that to you. I'm not
Yeah.
judge. You can be judged because you judge with equal justice and mercy. You
Mhm.
know all of it. I'm going to be human." And that was when it really shifted for me. That when I decided, okay, the only thing I can change is myself. Okay, God, I can't change them. I can't change the situation. You can't take it away. It
Yep.
happened. So change me. Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was the huge shift for me, where I was willing to look at what forgiveness was and what it
Yeah.
wasn't. So I'm
Yeah.
going to read what there's more to this, right? I'm no expert on forgiveness, but here's
Yeah.
what um, forgiveness is not, which kind of
Okay.
helped me. Forgiveness is not saying it's okay. Forgiveness is not saying my feelings and experiences don't matter. It's not approving of certain behaviors or viewpoints. It's not allowing someone to continue to mistreat you. It's not tolerating abuse. It's not saying you must stay in a relationship or reconcile. It's not dismissing your pain. And it's not ignoring the consequences of theirs or your own actions. So when I was able to sit and be like, hmm, all of those things that I listed
Right.
were my fears, that if
Yeah.
I did forgive, then all of that would be true. That abuse was okay, that,
Yep.
betrayal was okay, and, the way I was treated was okay. And it was so interesting in the process of saying, okay, I'm willing to consider God's way. I'm
Yep.
willing to consider forgiveness as a way not only to ask for forgiveness for myself, right? That I so
Yep.
desperately needed, but that I could receive forgiveness and that forgiveness would come to me, but it was meant to flow through me to others as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
is so empowering, right?
Yeah. And it's so empowering. It's so freeing. I even hindsight held on way too long, like you said, to that
So
unforgiveness.
guilty. Yeah. Wasn't even
Yeah.
realizing I was doing it. I think it took someone else, it probably was my therapist at the time, helping me see. And I'm like, I'm not holding on forgiveness with these people. And she's like, you are. And I'm like, so what were you saying?
Yeah. Yeah. No, sometimes it does take that outside person
Hmm.
to be like, "Oh, hey, let's look at this," or let's be honest with ourselves about what's going on. And
Hmm.
so as I did that, and as I was willing to bring it to God, and as I was willing to say, "Okay, let me see your way," it was almost
Yeah.
skeptical, if I'm being honest.
Right.
I
You're
mean,
like, oh, try. Yeah. Here we go.
yeah,
Let's see what you got. Yeah.
yeah, I got myself in this bitterness, so, like,
Right.
let's see what you have. Let's see if it
Yeah.
works, right? Trial.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's my humanness, and I wish I would have gone to God's way and offered forgiveness to my offenders, right? More freely, because the freedom that came with that, the healing that came with that, the development that just started turning within me, really, I felt like that was the marked moment. It was a marked moment of forgiveness, but it was also a process,
Yeah.
which I also think, is important to acknowledge, that
But I
forgiveness
think that,
is that.
oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh,
Forgiveness
no,
is.
that is a choice and a process.
Mhm. Well, I was just going to say there's a beauty in that season of grace, right? When we've all seen it and experienced it, whether we're a believer or not, we've seen the beauty of grace. So I feel like as much as you were hard on yourself in those moments, God allows us those places and spaces until we allow him in, of like saying, like, God, show me what forgiveness looks like. And we think like, oh, I've forgiven that person. And you're like, you're still holding that in your heart, which I'm guilty of
Yeah.
multiple
Yeah.
times. People,
Yes.
family, business, whatever it is, church, we can all hold our grudges and things and not realize how much it hinders us in our growth moving forward, and may not have any ties to that person. They may not have any idea in the moment, you
Yes,
know?
that's so good. And it's so true. Like, forgiveness is for you, right?
Mhm.
Forgiveness is really frees us. It
Yeah.
doesn't free the other person. It's their job to do forgiveness with God. And in
Yep.
reconciliation, it is important to walk through forgiveness with other people. I'm not saying that, but in
Yep.
situations sometimes where there's a divorce, there's an unhealthy person, or there's a death, like, there's not an opportunity to reconcile with
Yep.
people.
Yep.
And there's still healing, and there's still forgiveness and reconciliation between you and God, and
Yep.
there's still he can still redeem that beauty.
Yep.
Yeah, which is so great. The other thing that I wanted to also mention is that when you do reconcile with another person, right?
Mhm.
It's beautiful, and God can redeem the most drastically gone bad situations that
Right.
there
Yep.
are.
We both have
Both.
seen it, right? Yeah.
Yes, we've seen it, and there needs to be vulnerability, there needs to be healing, there needs to be actions, like you're saying,
Yep.
behind apologies, there has to be a changed heart, right? We don't
Yep.
want just behavioral changes, we want, like, a
No.
changed heart and posture. And so, my situation did not, I'm gonna laugh and stop because I have a dog, and she's literally, like, pawing at me over and over, and my brain is stopping and, like, going, like, going, keep going, but I'm like, my attention is being drawn to a dog. Anyways,
You would know. You would not know at all. You're doing a great job.
I'm like, shh. I'm like, River, shh, stop.
No, I wouldn't even know. I had no idea. Just put her
Oh,
on
that's
your
so
lap.
funny. Yeah,
Yep.
she's like, she wants to be in the photo.
Yep.
Come here, River.
Yep. She
Um,
wants. Let's give her debut.
yeah,
There
this
you go.
is my puppy. This is
See,
River.
sweet. She just wanted to be a part of it. It's our
She's
guest today.
yeah, she's like, I just want love.
River, we forgive you for interrupting your mom during this podcast. We love you and you just wanted some attention. So we're working on forgiveness, even you.
That's so funny. Yes. So, the other thing I wanted to do is read, like, what forgiveness is, because as I
Yeah.
started walking towards forgiveness, as I started considering it and growing, forgiveness was like a muscle. It's not like a yes or no. It's like, where are you on the continuum of
Yep.
forgiveness, right?
Yep.
And so here's kind of what I experienced or found as I went. Like, forgiveness is cutting off the ties to your offender or the offense that happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's giving God his rightful place as judge, and us stepping down to be humans as we
Yep.
are meant to be. Relinquishing our desire to be paid back, or, repaid for what happened. Relinquishing my right to get even,
Mm.
which is hard because sometimes, that anger inside of you can well up because it's
So,
costly, right?
right. Yep. And
Yes.
so valid. Yeah.
Yes. Creating a healthy boundary for myself to be safe, creating healthy boundaries for myself to begin healing, um, creating healthy boundaries for myself to continue in relationships with the person or to end the
Oh,
relationship. And I think boundaries are so important and so like a hot topic that sometimes people don't like talking about because they think boundaries are wrong or
Yeah.
bad, right?
Yeah.
But boundaries are really for us. So once I started putting boundaries around myself, I felt like I could drop the unforgiveness because unforgiveness was really trying to protect me by putting up all these walls. And once
Yep.
I realized I could have my own limits and boundaries around myself, what I'd participate in or not, what I'd say or not, what I'd discuss or not with certain people, um, I really felt like then I could start taking the walls down that I had built around me out of like self preservation.
Well, I think sometimes you bring up a good point. Like sometimes we don't even realize the walls that we have built, right? And their protection, right? I did the same thing, whether it's grief or loss or being a single mom, and it's a protection mechanism, right? And then you don't even realize you're like, I have all these walls. You're like, how do I get them down? And they take time, right? And like you said, forgiveness, healthy boundaries. I don't think people love the word boundaries, but I think if you instill them properly, it is so great and so life giving and can change and be pivotal in relationships and friendships, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. The other things, a couple of things are extending the grace that God so freely given me. It
Mm-hmm.
came to a point where I could see my own humanness, which I think is essential, and see the humanness of another person and
Yep.
say, if I've been forgiven a lifetime of offense,
Yep.
am I willing to extend that forgiveness to somebody for the one or 1000th thing that they've done to me, right?
Right.
To not continually put that on them over and over when I've been
Yep.
forgiven so
Yeah.
much. Um, and then the last thing I think which was huge for me is realizing that Jesus is my healer, not the other person. I
Right.
really wanted my spouse at the time to heal what was broken.
Yep.
He couldn't. Like, he
No.
couldn't. And whatever broke you or situation, they can't heal you. The only
Right.
person who can heal you is the one who created you, right? And
I,
so that distinction for me was huge because I wanted something from that person or other people in an apology
yep.
to heal something that was broken. And even when I did get an apology, it didn't do anything.
Yep.
It did nothing for me. And I hate to say
Right.
that, but I still had all the hurt and wound. And I feel like when I got to the this is what forgiveness is and isn't, when I got to that bitterness, which I wish I wouldn't have, but I did, I
Yeah.
experienced it to be
Yep.
real about it, to being like, okay, God, then show me a different way. And that was a huge shift in my own personal healing, where
Yep.
I felt like I was like, okay, God, heal me,
Yep.
then show me how to do this because
Right.
I want to do it your way because I did it my way and it literally
Right.
led me
Didn't
into
work.
depression and worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. So, so empowering to look at it and to view it and be able to see,
Yes.
and so
Yeah.
you've come such a long way, it's so beautiful to see the transformation and we're all guilty of it, right? I think we are all guilty of holding unforgiveness, whether we realize it or not, and
Mhm.
forgiving ourselves, right, for past mistakes. And I think you and I will unpack that in probably a previous or next episode of this podcast of just talking about forgiveness because it's such a journey, right? And can you ever
Mhm.
say that you've arrived there or right? You're
No.
always
Yeah.
constantly, it's, you and I have talked multiple times. It's hard to even walk in forgiveness just with our family members. I think it's easier to forgive a stranger or someone like cuts you off or whatever at the grocery store. The people closest that know us best, those are hard moments,
Mhm.
but
Yeah. Well, and it's that, like you said, it's that beautiful journey. Like, we're never arriving. We're
no.
always exercising
Yeah.
that muscle. We're learning, we're growing. We're going to be in relationship and we're humans, we're on earth. We're going to have fractures in relationships. And so forgiveness is something that's not going anywhere.
Right.
It's coming around and God gives us that forgiveness between us and God, but he also teaches us the forgiveness we can have with others so we can live free
Yep.
and process the emotions and walk through it rather than get stuck and stunted by it, right?
Right.
Yes.
Well, look now, like how freeing it must feel to let go of some of those things that were holding you in bondage, or like you said, that analogy of like a chain. You didn't even probably realize how heavy it weighed on your life. And now looking at how much freer it is, right? But like you
Yes.
said, it's kind of a journey. So you're learning in that situation, then a new one comes about and you're learning how to forgive in that moment, So I
Yeah.
feel like it's constant, just surrendering that and learning how to, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and if you're listening, we'll talk more about this again in a few more podcasts. We'll continue the conversation. on forgiveness, but we just want to validate, like, we're sorry for what you've walked through. Like,
Yes.
life is hard, and
Very.
validating that relationship situations, even abuse, like, you didn't deserve to be treated that
Yeah.
way. It wasn't okay.
Yeah.
It was costly, and it cost you something, it cost me something, right?
Mhm.
And just knowing that forgiveness isn't taking that away,
Not at all. Yep.
but it's offering you a space to go where you don't have to live with all of that attached to you and
Yeah.
naming you and holding you bondage, that it's saying, like, you can move forward with freedom, knowing
Mhm.
we know that costs a lot, but you
Yep.
can still be free and move forward in a different way.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I was just gonna say it doesn't define you, right? We all
Yeah.
carry scars, and you and I have walked through really hard things. And so, yeah, our heart goes out to those who are even in the process of hurting or walking through, or maybe just come out of a situation. We are here to
Mhm.
support you in any way that we can, especially
Yes.
through this.
Yeah, yes. So we would love to hear from you. If you wanted to find us on Instagram or Facebook at Peace Runs Deep, if you want to email us at peacerunsdeep@gmail.com with your questions about forgiveness, we would love to invite you, or unforgiveness, into the
Yeah,
conversation. We're so glad that you joined us today, and we'll continue the conversation next week on forgiveness. So thanks, Melissa.
thank you.